My biggest resource, and it's not a book, it's not a website, it's friends.
Hi, I'm Leanne Watson. I'm so happy to have you here on our podcast talk show, You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. I'll be asking 10 questions of each guest, exploring the humanity and experiences of living with MD. I'm so happy to have you here. Before we begin, I just would like to apologise in advance for my use of Becker's muscular dystrophy instead of saying Becker muscular dystrophy throughout this interview with the lovely Brad Miller. So please accept my apologies for every time I say Becker's. I actually mean Becker muscular dystrophy. Enjoy. We have the interesting and sharing Brad Miller from Ontario, Canada, with us today to discuss his life with Becker's dystrophy. I've been following Brad for some time on Instagram under his handle, My Becker Story. I certainly relate to many of his posts, even though my form of muscular dystrophy is different. My experiences have been quite similar. He discusses things such as the perils of a windy day, which I really relate to. I and many others appreciate his disability advocacy with a dialogue around such issues as accessible parking bays and their many unfortunate uses, general discrimination and ignorance, moments of compassion and tolerance, a thing called the Gowers Manoeuvre, and the need for a fighting spirit when you have a disability such as Becker's muscular dystrophy. I acknowledge the traditional owners of country, particularly the Wadawurrung people upon whose unceded land I broadcast. I pay my respects to elders past and present. So welcome today. Thank you so much for taking up your time, Brad.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. It's definitely good to have the opportunity to speak with more people for sure.
And so, well, first off then, what, for listeners who may not understand all the different forms yet of the muscular dystrophies, what is Becker's muscular dystrophy and when were you diagnosed?
Yeah, see, I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that can go into detail and, I'll give a simple explanation. So Becker muscular dystrophy to me, again, just very basic, knowing that it causes muscle wasting and, and the one thing about Becker muscular dystrophy and probably other muscular dystrophies, it can affect two individuals, three individuals in different ways. And, people be at different stages. I mean, and also people get diagnosed at different ages. I was diagnosed at age 10, and, there's other people that get diagnosed in their teens, late 20s to even in their 50s sometimes. So, I mean, I guess that's my little explanation of Becker muscular dystrophy. I didn't go too much into detail, but
And what muscles does it tend to affect, like generally? Because, that's why I like to ask this question because it is different. Every MD everyone has a different experience with it, but there's still sort of a general range of muscles that each one affects, isn't there?
yeah, I mean, if it was one, I'd definitely say the legs, and other people it might be their arms. In my situation, though, sometimes I do believe sometimes the work we choose and maybe the things we do can aggravate the muscles more and maybe break them down quicker because, you know, I worked in a call center, got a work related injury, and my arms haven't sort of been the same since. So you could have people with, like I do see other people with Becker muscular dystrophy using manual wheelchairs, and sometimes I wonder how they can do that with their arms because, again, it's just sometimes I do believe it's what sometimes we will overuse our muscles trying to push ourselves. But
But in the
I
lack
mean,
of
yeah, like,
and in the lack of knowledge, isn't it, medical knowledge and all that, we don't really know, do we? That's
right.
the
And I mean, that's why I guess it makes it so hard to study the muscular dystrophies and try and find a cure for everyone. But I tell you, we've certainly come a lot farther now, and there's a lot more hope there for treatments.
Yes, yeah, that's great. Are there a few trials and things for Becker's dystrophy that
Yeah.
you know of?
Currently, there's some Becker muscular dystrophy trials going on, and I mean, it's very hopeful when you hear people talking about it, and it gives me hope for my future, even though maybe I've progressed to the point I'm at, that it could still help me. And I know that it can help younger generations. So the few things and the few testings that are going on and the people who are focused on Becker muscular dystrophy has changed in the last, even just, it feels like the last 2 years, all of a sudden there's been a big focus. Some say there should be more, but at least we're at a point where we're getting there.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like that rolling ball, I know that keeps, gathering. I don't know, I'm terrible at analogies, but anyway,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, it does seem that's what I feel like, that we were discussing just before. But since I was diagnosed too, I feel like there's a lot more advocacy and a lot more work, in the medical field as well as, personal stories and all that sort of thing to make people more aware of all the rare diseases that there are out there, and the dystrophies are definitely a big part of that. Yeah, that grouping. So so you said you were diagnosed at 10, did you say?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. What did you imagine your grown up life would look like when you were younger, like compared to sort of, did it change as your condition, like how much has your condition impacted how you thought your grown up life would look like, I guess, or
Yeah, because I know, I mean, at age 10, I grew up around motorsports and stuff. So there was a time I wish I could become a race driver, but like there was a few times that I had the opportunity to, get behind the wheel of a go-kart and, race my friends and stuff. After doing that physically, my legs would be very weak. It sort of changed my outlook of where I thought I was going to be going. I thought I'd be, into racing and, know, be one of these race drivers in Formula One and all that stuff. But I realized, you know, that the physical demands of that took that away from me, and so, obviously there's a lot of other things you would think that when you're growing up, how life's going to be, you think you're going to, achieve certain things. And it sometimes you can still achieve these things, but it sometimes can make it a little bit harder and more difficult. I mean, again, I mean, we look at today, there's a lot more, I believe, opportunities for people when, say they want to be involved in some type of sport that now, if they can't participate physically, they could find another way to be involved. So, you
mm,
know, I think these days, a lot of people are lucky that they can maybe connect with the right people and people can accommodate for them. And despite whatever, muscular dystrophy or disability they have, it is possible to still at times pursue your dreams.
well, yeah, with technology and that sort of thing, it's fabulous, isn't it? There's in a weird way, there's never been a better time to have a disability.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yeah. Are you still involved in sports at all? Like, do you sort of, rather than participate, do you sort of go to track events and things like that?
I mean, I used to go to the racetracks, but in recent years, and it's always been like that. In the summer, that's because that's when they're doing a lot of the racing. It can get really hot out there, and it just adds an extra challenge, and then accessibility becomes an issue. So in recent years, I've stopped going to the races just because the challenges, it can
Outweigh.
get quite frustrating. I mean, some tracks have improved and stuff like that, but like other people, I found a way eventually after sharing my story. I started laps for muscular dystrophy, which is, it started in Canada. We had a lot of supporters. Again, people retire and move on, but I'm still doing laps for MD and it's still operating in the United States, supporting the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And in the UK, we had some online racers and they were, donating to Muscular Dystrophy UK. And so that was my way to get involved. And, I can sort of sit back at home in the comfort and not have to worry about the accessibility or the heat, but still be involved in, the
So
racing community.
how does that work? That sounds like a really interesting fundraising
Yeah,
venture.
well, the original way it worked was that race drivers would donate $1 for every lap they lead. Around the time though when the pandemic came in, I mean, money got really tight for a lot of people. So in some ways, we've moved away from that just because it can get expensive in racing. So right now, what we do is we ask drivers and teams to display the decal, and we also have a race team, Keaton Pipe Racing, and what they do is they hold a weekend fundraiser at a racetrack where they sell the decals and collect donations, and that really helps raise awareness about muscular dystrophy. And in a way, having them support it keeps me involved in the racing community and also gives them just something great to support and bring more
Yeah.
awareness.
Yeah, that's great. There's so many really really amazing fundraising initiatives, aren't there? And, as you say, yeah, that you keep your involvement going, which is fabulous. Um, so how has the vision changed then of what you thought? How has life worked out for you now? Have you found ways? You're obviously a fighter, obviously someone who keeps exploring.
Yeah, because, I mean, after my work-related injury, I had to find ways to, you know, try and earn an income. And, I actually tried to go back into, because it was a call center where I got hurt. I tried to go back and I already knew that it was going to cause a problem. So I had to accept the fact that I couldn't work any longer just because my arms had come to a point where repetitive tasks will, really hurt them. That's why whatever I do now, I can do at my own pace. And, but, you know, I've tried to be creative because, there's things obviously you want to, when you grow up, you want to be able to own a home. My biggest issue is I thought by now I'd at least be living in a place that was accessible. And so that's my biggest issue right now is I know in the future, the place where I currently live, it's going to become a problem if anything, if it progresses anymore, the muscular dystrophy. So, cost of living and all that stuff. So, you know, I thought maybe I'd be, able to earn a good living. But again, that's why I say to everyone else with a disability, if you are working to, I guess take advantage, make sure you save up your money and be prepared for, needing accessibility, needing that van or the vehicle that you need. I've been lucky though. I still know that there's still a lot of hope out there for me because I'm trying my best and I know that one of these days I will move to somewhere accessible and and I'm also thankful that I have a vehicle now that I can transport my mobility scooter. So, you know,
That's a big thing, isn't
yeah,
it?
despite all the other little things, there's still a lot of good things.
There's still a lot of good things. And you speak on the one of the biggest issues that I find with LGMD is that the trajectory is really variable for everyone, and you might plateau there for the rest of your life, where you are now, or you might not. And that's the other thing. You've always got to have in the back of your mind. You might need to move eventually.
Yeah,
You might not. It's just one of those things, isn't it? There's always something, yeah,
yeah.
to kind of you've got to sort of plan for, but yeah, it just sort of it's a different way of thinking. So on your journey, through your journey with Becker's dystrophy and life and all that sort of thing, what do you think's been your most pivotal moment?
To me, it would be, I mean, and I don't always want to, because every podcast I go on to, again, I'm going to repeatedly talk about the same things at times. But again, it would be that time I got the injury because when I was working, I was making good money. Everything was going great, and then all of a sudden I got the injury that was blamed on Becker muscular dystrophy. But you know, I mean, it was blamed on that, and I really didn't know what to do at that time. So that's why it was a time when I was lost. And I know there's a lot of people that might reach that point, and sometimes it's hard to think about. But this is what led to me sharing my story. Out of it being blamed on Becker muscular dystrophy, I tried to search out other people affected by it, and the internet was out there, but social media wasn't as big as it was. So, I mean, it was amazing to feel like one of the first to start sharing my story on Facebook and stuff. And then I just met people all over the world. And, so that was a pivotal point to where I had support. And in that moment, I found that maybe there's something else. Maybe this new direction will just, help me to raise awareness and stuff because nobody was raising awareness at that time.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, so that sort of gave you a new purpose, and you're really helping people, like you really are. So that's an interesting and unique pivotal moment for sure. And also, just a little aside, that also speaks to, because that's obviously more likely coming from insurance companies, protecting themselves to blame Becker's dystrophy. It definitely speaks to society's attitude towards disability, doesn't it? Like if you, to all intents and purposes, were, you know, able bodied, then they would have to have not said that, made that sort of, claim.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it shows just still the way our society just doesn't view people like us
Yeah.
very favourably at all. And it's not right.
That's
Not
true.
equity, is it? So speaking of life is never in our control. At best, we can steer, but there are bigger things at play. Where do you find your hope and joy?
I mean, there was always one thing that always got me through any tough times, and it was like, I don't know, just listening to music. As a kid, I had the little radio, it was 1980s and stuff. I had my little headphones on, and I just switched through all the radio stations and find songs that resonated with me. And you know, if I was ever feeling down and stuff, even in my teenage years, I would throw on one of my favorite uplifting songs, and that would really help me through a lot. And so that's what ended up with me first actually just starting to pursue a music career, which the direction I went into at the time was hip hop music because, that was big at my time. And it was a form of music where it was very inclusive. Like it didn't matter where you were from. It was just about community. And so, that, and also being bullied and stuff, getting involved in some type of group or something made me feel included. So,
Yeah.
sometimes it was like, I don't know, I don't know, I'd say outcast, but, the kind of people that, people maybe didn't treat properly. And so, it was nice to,
To not
pursue
feel.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And would you say othered? Like you didn't feel sort of as othered. I kind of like that verb sometimes, when you feel like you're a bit of a just a bit of a anomaly in a group. Yeah.
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 Because it didn't matter about your disability or anything like that. It was just about, if you were, pretty good at the music or talented, just like everyone else who goes and, that's why I say to other people, like, if you have something you like, try and get into a group because it'll help you through those tough times.
Yeah, that's such a great, really wise sage advice, I think, and really important for every child. I think that it's good to have that extra group of whether it's sport or music or whatever it is, but another or scouts or anything like that. It's always good, isn't it, to have
Yeah.
another another group. So what particular song comes to mind that got you through? Do you reckon as a teenager? What's one of your sort of nostalgic
Hmm.
memories?
That's a tough one because I like all music genres,
Yeah.
and I've never really taken the time to sit down and think.
Well, that's all right. I just sprung it on you, so you
Yeah.
don't need to answer. But that's the thing when you listen to so much music, isn't it? Or when you enjoy so much.
Yeah, I wish there was one song that I'll probably think about it after this,
Yeah, that's
how there's
right.
that one song. But
Yeah.
yeah, I've never really. Yeah.
So, well, you've got music and you've got car racing interest, but and you've written a book, which is lovely, a memoir about Becker's dystrophy, which is selling worldwide. And you've had your blog since 2009. But you are a poet too, aren't you? I'm sure I've read your poetry online before.
Probably.
And so you're quite a talented sort of a bloke, really. Are you still doing your poetry and have you got any other books up your sleeve?
Well, like about poetry and stuff. So I like doing that stuff, and there's stuff I've written that I've never put out there just because maybe I don't have the confidence in it. But I've put a few things up there because for some reason, when you get to sit back and look at everything, if say you're not included in something and it gives you time to think, that's why like I write a lot and do stuff like that. And so it's funny how it started from music, and then I started writing the blog, and then always in the back of my mind I was thinking, it'd be nice to write a book. I've seen other people do it, but you look at that task and you're like, that's impossible. Like, how do you do that? That's
Yeah.
and my only thing is, you know I had a lot of time, and I was like, what, I'm finally going to just do this and push through. And it was a tough experience because you're going through your life, you're remembering things, and you know it,
Mm,
it pushes you. So
brings
like that's why I'll say, like, writing the book, if anyone else is doing that, just keep doing it. I mean, there'll be times you're going to have to take a break and don't force it, but in the end it's worth it. And I was just surprised myself that actually I have a book out there. I mean, it wasn't an easy task, that's for sure.
yeah, no. How long was it from sort of, I guess, inception or from the first time your finger hit the keyboard to sort of opening your box of a published book? How long was that?
It was, to be honest, it was about a year and a half.
Yeah,
It was,
okay.
yeah,
It does,
lots of, lots
I've
of,
heard, I was just interested, I've heard it can
yeah.
take, a long time, yeah, a very long time.
I
So
mean, I guess
that's
the one thing I was lucky with is I already had the stories that I had on my blog and stuff. And so I was able to, rework some of those, add to them. Like if you find anything on my blog now, it's not going to read the same as it does in my book because I've added to it and, fixed a lot. I mean, the more you write, the better you become.
yeah, that's yes, I've definitely found that myself. And who so my next question out of the 10 questions that we ask, who couldn't you live without and why? Is there a who or a group of who's or anything?
Yeah, I mean, it comes to, like close family, like my wife and certain friends and stuff that are, always able to be there for you when, you might need some help or just some company and stuff like that. So it's just,
Mm,
it's really a group of people, which again, a lot of people, you feel, it's having a group of people, even if it's two or three or four people. I mean, it definitely helps you through a lot of things. Having people to turn to is definitely one thing you really need.
yeah. So we keep getting back to a common thread, I think, with that question. It's really basically boils down to community, doesn't it? Which starts probably with your spouse and sort of branches out more, your parents and, all that sort of thing
That's right.
and the wider community. Yeah. Oh, that's great. It's great that you've got it, and that's really important. Yeah, for all of us, isn't it? But you notice it more and it becomes more important, I guess, when you can't take it for granted as much, I guess. That's I feel anyway.
That's true, and I'll tell you one thing is like in certain moments, like I was dealing with anxiety, and it was just really nice to be able to call a friend and say, "Hey, can you come over and just hang out?" And just to have those people, because some of us are married, and say some of us like say I don't work, but my wife does, so we're apart. But it's nice to have friends that you can call on when someone can't be there.
Yeah. And you do talk about anxiety in your book to an extent too, and obviously talk about as much or as little as you would like to. But so just from my small experience with disability, I've never really been a particularly anxious person, which I think you mentioned in your book as well, that
Yeah,
you probably weren't either. But there is something about being disabled and being all the things that go with being disabled, being vulnerable in almost every way, that makes you a more anxious person, that can make you a more anxious person than you've been otherwise. How have you been able to work through that kind of nicely, or does it still keep rearing its head, or like how have you sort of
well, I'll
been able?
tell you, I mean, it's weird. Like last summer, it was a real struggle for me. Like I could barely get out of the house. It was just weird, you know. And I also tried, my doctor prescribed a pill to me, which I took for a week, and it just didn't work for me. I had to stop taking it. I just had to sort of learn and again talk through a lot of the anxiety I had because something was happening at the time when a lot of my anxiety came up. Unfortunately, someone who was trying to help, and they weren't trying to be, you know, trying to scare me in any way, but anytime I'd mention about a fall, they're like, you're going to break your leg and then you're never going to walk again. And they just, for some reason, that was sort of the thing that they would repeat to me. So it made me scared to walk just to take the
Yeah,
garbage out.
yeah.
I mean, people think they're helping and, sometimes they can. I mean, obviously people don't want other people, and especially if they've experienced the fall. Like I had a friend, I mean, people with muscular dystrophy, it doesn't matter what type, if you're still walking and you fall and you break your leg, that's going to cause a huge issue. And then a lot of the anxiety had to do around with, not living in an accessible place and thinking, oh shoot, I better be very, very careful because if I break my leg, I'm going to be in big trouble. So, and in recent years, I've struggled with anxiety, but it's gotten better. And again, like I said, last year was tough, but eventually 6 months later, I went to my doctor and he actually ran some blood tests and said I had low vitamin D, which can, again, cause anxiety feelings. And I was having like shakiness and all that stuff. Like my vitamin D was lower than it should be. So hopefully, or I think since I've increased that, I've been doing a lot better this year. I can do a lot of the things that really set me off before. And, being alone at home used to also be a big issue. And thankfully, I'm doing really well this year.
Yeah, good on you. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, it definitely seems to go hand in hand, doesn't it? That, various levels of anxiety with disability, depending on. So we've gone to the who's of what makes your life easier or who you can't live without. What is there a device or gadget that you couldn't live without that you are really grateful for?
Yeah, it's a really, really simple thing too. I call it a pickup stick. So it's something where if you drop something, it has the trigger and you can pick something up because, I reached the point where I can't bend down anymore to pick anything up. So I even joked to my wife, I said, even if I saw $100 on the ground, I couldn't bend down to get it. I mean, so having that stick, I mean, it's a small thing, but it makes a huge, huge difference.
Huge, yeah. At one stage, I had about 5 or 6, I think, in
Yeah.
various rooms and,
Yeah.
uh, and also of lengths. Have you got there's so many different types. You've got magnets on the end as well and, then the lengths, obviously, of the handle and that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
I love the magnet comes in handy, but I use mine so much that the magnets fall out of it. But like you said, you should have a good supply of them on hand because you don't want to, sometimes you'll drop that pickup stick and need another one just to pick it up.
Yeah, 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 that's right. I was still doing sewing for a while I was sort of transitioning into where I am now. And one thing I found, can't remember where I got it from, but it's a long telescopic sort of silver wand, I guess,
Yeah.
and it's got a light at the end of it and a
Okay.
magnet. So
Yep.
every time pins or needles,
Oh,
I could
okay.
pick them up from the floor. That was really great, that one. But
Yeah, I've seen
yeah,
those before too. Yeah.
yeah. So once again, technology is super these days, how it can help us. So great. So we're getting towards the end here, Brad Miller. What resource has helped you navigate your Becker's dystrophy that you would recommend to others?
It's weird. The one resource, and it always comes down to it is, there's a lot of people say a lot of negative things about social media, but my biggest resource, and it's not a book, it's not a website, it's friends, you know, connecting with another person who has Becker muscular dystrophy, just like anyone else. I mean, I could connect with other people. Actually, I do know other people with other forms of muscular dystrophy that I talk to on a regular basis, and the similarities of what we face can be amazing and also help us through because someone could say, "Hey, I've done this," or "Hey, do that." So, I mean, the biggest resource is people.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, that's really true. Really true. So, well, finally, what is your advice to other people newly diagnosed? You might have already been peppering us with advice anyway throughout the interview.
Yeah, I mean, if people who are recently diagnosed, the first thing, and even a parent or an older person who may have been diagnosed, is the first thing they run to is the internet. The thing is, you have to really pace yourself because you might read all the negative stuff, and then that's really going to set off a lot of issues. So sometimes it's good to speak to a doctor or a lot of these muscular dystrophy charities around the world, or I mean, you can give them a quick call and they might set you up with the right person, give you the support you need. So that's why, supporting these muscular dystrophy charities is so important because, they offer a lot. Like I've been able to call Muscular Dystrophy Canada before and, especially when I was dealing with my injury and just getting some advice and stuff. And, they can't give medical advice, but maybe equipment and stuff like that. So,
And and,
that's been a
and
big
ma-
thing.
yeah, and maybe lead you to organization that can help you or something. But they are fabulous, aren't they? The muscular dystrophy organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, there's other resources I guess people can turn to, like, again, books. Like,
Yes.
I'll be honest with you. When I wrote my book, I didn't think more than 5 or 20 people would buy it, and it's far exceeded my expectations, showing me that these books can help a lot of people, and that's why it's amazing. When I hear from other people saying they're writing books and stuff, it's just you know these little things that you think are challenging. Just do them. Write your book, and you'll be helping a lot of people out there.
Yeah, that's true. Well, that brings us to the end of our chat, and I really appreciate you being on You, Me, and Muscular Dystrophy to talk about Becker muscular dystrophy. I will have in the show notes the details of your book. We'll We've also been showing images as we've been talking anyway. So your book is Fighting Towards Victory.
That's
Um,
right.
that's right, isn't it? Yes. It's available on Amazon, I think, well, definitely Australia, Canada, and the US and the
Yep.
UK.
And I'll just say one thing is like
Yes.
recently, for some reason, after selling my book, I came up with an idea for a workbook for fighting towards victory because, I'm still struggling with, sometimes with the anxiety and stuff of, just self-confidence. So I sort of wrote a book that goes with it too, that people can do to, help them through, challenges that are coming their way because as we get older, the challenges still come. But to me, again, life, it's just about sometimes fighting through those tough times.
That sounds really, really great. To find out when that book comes out and other information and the great things that you share, we can go to Instagram as well. Your handle is
Yep, the at my Becker story, or also I have at fighting towards victory. That's the other one as
you've
well.
got that as well. Okay, and I'll put those on the notes as well. So yeah, that's wonderful. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be with me tonight, and I'm sure I've certainly learnt a lot. I'm sure our listeners have enjoyed it as well.
Well, I
Enjoy it.
just want to thank you so much for, inviting me to the podcast. It's, sometimes I used to get nervous, but it's never bad to be speaking with someone else and trying to, I guess, raise more awareness about muscular dystrophy.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Leanne. Thanks for your time in listening to this podcast, You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy. To continue to help our community, it would be so great if you could like, share, subscribe and or comment on the show. Your feedback is always appreciated, and if you would like to be a guest, please contact me through Instagram, leanne's_wheel_life, or email leanne@leanneswheellife.com. Take care until we come together on the next episode of You, Me and Muscular Dystrophy.